The morning sun barely touched the windows of Rosewood Diner when Maya pushed through the back door at 5:45. Her sneakers squeaked against the worn linoleum floor, the same sound she'd heard every morning for the past 6 years. She tied her apron strings twice, a habit from her first day when they'd come undone right in front of a table full of customers. The coffee maker gurgled to life as she flipped switches and wiped down counters. Everything had its place here. Salt and pepper shakers lined up just so, menus stacked in perfect piles, napkin dispensers filled to the brim. This was her world now, and most days she didn't let herself think about how different it was from the world she'd imagined. By 7 o'clock, the first wave arrived. They always did. Elderly folks from Sunset Hills, the retirement home 3 blocks down the street. They shuffled in slowly, some with walkers, others leaning on canes that tapped out a rhythm on the tile floor. Maya knew their orders by heart. She didn't need to write anything down anymore. There was Mr. Peterson, 90 years old if he was a day, who always sat in booth 3 and ordered 2 eggs over easy with wheat toast. His hand shook when he lifted his coffee cup, but he never spilled a drop. He'd been coming here since before Maya started working, back when his wife was still alive. Now he came alone, reading the same newspaper he'd probably already read at home. Then there was Helen, a tiny woman with white hair pulled back in a tight bun. She ordered oatmeal with brown sugar every single day. Not white sugar. Had to be brown. She'd correct you if you brought the wrong kind, but always with a smile that made the corners of her eyes crinkle. Helen used to be a teacher. Maya knew this because one slow afternoon, Helen had told her about the 43 years she'd spent in classrooms, shaping young minds, as she'd put it. The morning rush wasn't really a rush at this diner. Things moved slowly, gently, like the people who filled its booths and tables. Maya poured coffee, delivered plates of eggs and toast, and made small talk about the weather. It was always about the weather, safe, simple, predictable. By 9:30, the breakfast crowd thinned out. Maya cleared tables, her mind wandering as her hands worked on autopilot. Plates stacked just right, silverware sorted, cups and glasses loaded into gray plastic bins. She'd gotten so good at this she could practically do it with her eyes closed. That's when she noticed it, like she did every single day. The piano. It sat in the far corner of the diner, pushed up against the wall between 2 windows. An old upright with yellowed keys and a bench that had seen better days. Someone had donated it years ago, thinking it would add atmosphere to the place, but nobody played it. Nobody even looked at it most days. It had become just another piece of furniture, like the coat rack by the door or the bulletin board covered in faded community announcements. Maya wiped down the last table and let her eyes linger on that piano. Her fingers tingled, remembering. She could almost feel the smooth keys beneath her hands, almost hear the notes filling the space around her. But she pushed the feeling away like she always did. That was another life, another version of herself that didn't exist anymore. She'd been good once, really good. Good enough for a scholarship to the music conservatory downtown. Good enough that her teacher had said she had real talent, the kind that could take her places. She'd practiced 4 hours a day, sometimes more. Her mother would sit in their small living room listening, always listening, with that proud smile on her face. The accident happened 3 weeks before Maya was supposed to start at the conservatory. A truck ran a red light. Her mother never made it to the hospital. And suddenly, everything that had seemed so important, so clear, just dissolved. The scholarship waited, but Maya couldn't make herself go. Couldn't make herself sit at a piano and play while her mother's chair sat empty. Bills piled up fast. The small life insurance policy barely covered the funeral. Their apartment rent was due. Maya needed to work, needed to survive, needed to keep moving because stopping meant feeling everything she was trying to avoid. So she found this job. 40 hours a week became 50. 50 became 60. The piano gathered dust at home until she finally sold it. Too painful to look at, too heavy to carry into whatever future she was supposed to be building. That was 6 years ago. Now she was 28, still serving eggs and coffee, still going through the motions of a life that felt more like existing than living. People at the diner were nice enough. Her boss, Frank, was fair. The pay covered her bills with a little left over. It wasn't a bad life exactly, just not the one she'd planned. The lunch crowd started trickling in around 11. More folks from Sunset Hills, plus a few regulars from the neighborhood. Maya fell back into her rhythm. Take orders, deliver food, refill drinks, clear tables, smile, be pleasant. Don't think too much. Around 1 o'clock, things got quiet again. Just a handful of people scattered throughout the diner. Mr. Peterson was still there on his second cup of coffee, staring out the window at nothing in particular. Helen had returned for her afternoon tea. A couple Maya didn't recognize sat at the counter, and 2 more elderly residents were parked near the window in their wheelchairs, barely touching their soup. Frank had run out to pick up supplies. The cook was on his break in the back alley, sneaking a cigarette. The diner felt suspended in time, caught in that strange afternoon lull where everything gets quiet and still. Maya stood behind the counter, folding napkins that didn't need folding, and hummed without thinking about it. The tune came automatically, notes her hands had played 1,000 times, a piece by Chopin her mother had loved. She didn't even realize she was humming it until she caught herself, mid-phrase, and stopped. But the melody stayed in her head, insistent, refusing to be quiet. Her eyes drifted back to the piano. How long had it been since anyone had touched those keys? Years, probably. Was it even in tune anymore? Probably not. But in that moment, with the diner so quiet and still, with that melody running through her mind like water, Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a tiny crack in the wall she'd built, a whisper of something she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed. She looked around the diner. Mr. Peterson at his window, Helen with her tea, the couple at the counter focused on their phones, the 2 residents in wheelchairs, their eyes distant and sad. Nobody was paying attention to her. Nobody would care. Nobody would even notice. Maya untied her apron with trembling fingers. She folded it carefully and set it on the counter. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she walked across the empty floor, her footsteps echoing in the quiet. The piano bench creaked when she sat down. The wood was cool beneath her hands when she lifted the keyboard cover. The keys looked ancient, forgotten, waiting. She took a breath. Her fingers found their places, muscle memory from another lifetime. And for the first time in 6 years, Maya let herself remember what it felt like to be whole. Maya's fingers hovered over the keys for what felt like forever. They were dusty, yellowed from years of neglect, and she wondered if they'd even make a sound. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. What was she doing? This was crazy. She should get back to work. Frank would be back any minute. The cook would finish his break. Someone would need a coffee refill. But her hands didn't move away. They stayed there, trembling slightly, remembering the shape and feel of piano keys even after all this time. It was like seeing an old friend after years apart, strange and familiar all at once. She pressed down on middle C. The note rang out, slightly out of tune, but clear enough. It echoed through the quiet diner, and Maya felt something crack open inside her chest. Before she could talk herself out of it, her fingers found the opening notes of Claire de Lune. Debussy. Her mother's absolute favorite piece in the whole world. The first few notes were hesitant. Her fingers stumbled, searching for the right keys. It had been so long, too long. But then something clicked, like a door opening in her mind, and the music started to flow. Her hands remembered what her brain had tried to forget. They moved across the keys with growing confidence, pulling the melody out of that old, forgotten piano. The sound filled the empty spaces of the diner. It bounced off the windows and the walls. It wrapped around the tables and chairs. It was imperfect. The piano was out of tune in places, and Maya's timing wasn't quite right. She hit a wrong note and then another. But she kept going. She poured everything into those keys. 6 years of grief. 6 years of pretending she was fine. 6 years of burying the part of herself that made her feel alive. Her eyes closed without her meaning to. She wasn't in the diner anymore. She was in her old living room, and her mother was sitting in the green chair by the window. The afternoon light was streaming in, making everything warm and golden. Her mother's eyes were closed too, just listening. Always listening. With that small smile on her face that meant she was content. That meant everything was right in the world. A tear rolled down Maya's cheek, but she didn't stop playing. She couldn't stop. The music was pulling something out of her that had been locked away for too long. All the sadness she'd been carrying. All the dreams she'd given up. All the versions of herself she'd had to say goodbye to. When the last note faded away, the silence that followed felt enormous. Maya sat there with her hands still on the keys, breathing hard, not ready to open her eyes and come back to reality. Back to the diner and the dirty dishes and the life she'd built from the pieces of her broken dreams. Then she heard it. Someone was crying. Not just sniffling, but really crying. Deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere far away. Maya's eyes flew open. She turned on the bench, suddenly remembering where she was. Suddenly terrified that she'd done something wrong. What she saw made her freeze completely. Helen was sitting at her usual table, but her face was transformed. Tears were streaming down her wrinkled cheeks, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. Wide and real and full of something that looked like joy and heartbreak mixed together. She was clutching something to her chest. A photograph. Maya had seen her looking at it earlier but hadn't paid much attention. But Helen wasn't the only one crying. Mr. Peterson had stood up from his booth. This man who barely showed any emotion, who read his newspaper in silence every single day, was openly weeping. His hands covered his face and his shoulders shook. Through his fingers, Maya could see tears dripping onto his shirt. The couple at the counter had turned around on their stools. The woman had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide and wet. The man next to her was wiping his face with his napkin, not even trying to hide it. And the two elderly residents in their wheelchairs near the window, the ones who'd been staring off into space with such sad, distant expressions, they were holding hands now. Both of them crying. One of them was making these small sounds like a hurt animal, but somehow it didn't sound painful. It sounded like release. Maya stood up from the piano bench so fast she almost knocked it over. Her mind was racing. What had she done? Why was everyone crying? She felt panic rising in her throat. This wasn't supposed to happen. She'd just wanted to play. Just one song, just to remember for a moment what it felt like. "I'm so sorry," she started to say, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean to—" "No," Helen said, her voice breaking. She stood up from her table, still clutching that photograph. She walked toward Maya with slow, careful steps. "No, dear. Don't apologize. Please don't apologize." Helen's eyes were still full of tears, but her smile was the most genuine thing Maya had seen in years. She held out the photograph with trembling hands. It showed a younger version of Helen with a man in a military uniform. They were dancing. The photo was old, faded, the edges worn from being held too many times. "This was our wedding day," Helen said softly. 62 years ago. That song, Clair de Lune, it was playing when he proposed to me. We were in a little cafe in Paris. He was stationed there after the war ended. I was teaching at a school for military families." Her voice cracked and she had to pause to collect herself. "He died 5 years ago, stroke, very sudden, and I haven't heard our song since his funeral. I couldn't bear to. It hurt too much. But just now, hearing you play it, I saw him again. I felt him again. For the first time in 5 years, I remembered the good parts instead of just the losing him parts." Maya felt her own tears starting. She didn't know what to say. She'd never imagined her playing could do something like this, could reach into someone's memories and pull out something so precious. Mr. Peterson walked over, moving slowly, still wiping his eyes. His voice came out rough, like he hadn't used it for talking about real things in a long time. "My wife loved Debussy," he said simply. "Every Sunday morning she'd play his music on our old record player. That was 33 years of Sunday mornings. Then she got sick, cancer. She's been gone 3 years now. 3 years of silent Sundays." He looked at Maya with red, puffy eyes. "You sound like her." "Not exactly, but close enough. Close enough that I could pretend for a few minutes that she was still here, still filling our house with music." The woman from the counter approached, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "My grandmother used to play piano," she said quietly. "She had Alzheimer's. At the end, she didn't remember any of us. Not her children, not her grandchildren. But she remembered music. She'd hear a song and suddenly she'd be herself again. Just for a minute or two. That's all we got. Minutes. But those minutes mattered so much." Maya stood there surrounded by these crying, smiling strangers, and she realized something profound. Music hadn't just connected her to her mother. It connected everyone to their memories, to their people, to the moments that shaped their lives. It was a language that reached deeper than words ever could. One of the men in the wheelchair finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please," he said. "Could you play something else?" "Anything else? It's been so long since I felt anything but empty." Maya looked around the diner at these faces, these lives, these stories. She looked at the piano that nobody had touched in years. She thought about her mother and the green chair and the afternoon light. She thought about all the music she'd kept locked inside herself, because it hurt too much to let it out. Then she sat back down at the piano bench. Her hands found the keys again, and she started to play. Maya's fingers moved across the keys, playing a softer piece this time, something gentle and sweet, a lullaby by Brahms that she'd learned when she was 12. The notes drifted through the diner like a warm breeze, and she watched as the tension in people's faces started to ease. The crying didn't stop completely, but it changed, became softer, more peaceful. She played for 20 minutes straight. Maybe longer. Time felt strange and elastic, like it does when you're completely lost in something. She played Chopin and Mozart and Beethoven. She played songs her mother had taught her and songs she'd learned on her own. Her fingers stumbled here and there, hitting wrong notes, but nobody seemed to care. They were all too busy remembering. When she finally stopped, her hands were shaking from the effort. She hadn't played this much in 6 years, and her muscles were reminding her of that fact. But she felt something else too. Something lighter, like she'd been carrying a heavy backpack for years and had finally set it down. The sound of slow clapping made her turn around. More people had come into the diner while she was playing. She hadn't even heard the door chime. There were at least 15 elderly folks now, maybe more, scattered throughout the space. Some in wheelchairs, some with walkers, others standing near the door like they weren't sure if they should come in or not. Frank pushed through the door right behind them, his arms full of supply boxes. He froze when he saw the crowd. His eyes went wide, darting from the group of elderly people to Maya at the piano to the tears on everyone's faces. For a second, Maya thought she was about to get fired. She'd abandoned her station, let customers pile up, made a scene, but Frank just stood there, boxes in his arms, with the strangest expression on his face. He looked confused and amazed, and maybe a little bit like he might cry too. He set the boxes down carefully on the nearest table and cleared his throat. "Well," he said slowly, "I guess I missed something important." An elderly woman Maya had never seen before stepped forward. She was using a walker, moving carefully but with purpose. "Young lady," she said, her voice strong despite her age. "I was walking past with my friend Dorothy here. We heard the music through the window. We haven't heard live piano music in years. Decades, maybe. Do you work here?" Maya nodded, finding her voice. "Yes, ma'am. I'm a waitress. I'm sorry if I caused any trouble. I just thought, trouble?" The woman laughed, actually laughed. "My dear, you just gave me the best afternoon I've had since my husband passed. That's not trouble. That's a gift." Other people started talking then all at once, sharing their stories. An elderly man explained that he used to be a music teacher before he retired. A woman said her daughter had played piano before she moved across the country. Another person mentioned that the retirement home used to have a piano, but it broke years ago and they never replaced it. Frank listened to all of this, his expression shifting from confused to thoughtful, to something that looked almost like excitement. When there was a pause in the conversation, he spoke up. "Maya," he said, "how long have you been able to play like that?" She shrugged, feeling embarrassed suddenly. "Since I was 6. I was supposed to go to music school, but life happened. I haven't really played in years." "Years?" Helen shook her head in disbelief. "You played like someone who practices every day." "That was beautiful." Frank rubbed his chin the way he did when he was working through a problem. "Listen," he said, "I'm not going to pretend I understand what just happened here. But clearly something important did happen. And look at this crowd. I've never seen this many people in the diner at 2 in the afternoon." He walked over to the cash register and started pressing buttons, checking something. His eyebrows shot up. "And 3 of them already ordered food while I was gone." "Patricia, did you take these orders?" The cook's wife, who helped out sometimes during rushes, poked her head out from the kitchen. "Sure did. People wanted to eat while they listened. Figured you wouldn't mind." Frank looked at the piano, then at Maya, then at all the elderly faces watching him hopefully. Maya could see him doing math in his head, figuring out angles. He was a businessman after all, but he was also kind. Shh! He'd seen him give free meals to people who were short on cash, seen him hire people nobody else would give a chance. "Here's what I'm thinking," Frank said finally. "Maya, what if you played piano during slow hours? Nothing official. Just when things are quiet. If it brings people in, if it makes them happy, well, that's good for everyone." Maya's heart jumped. "Really? You'd be okay with that?" "Okay with it? I'd be grateful." But you still need to do your waitressing job. Can't have you playing piano while people are waiting for their eggs." "Of course," Maya said quickly. "I wouldn't. I just thought today, since it was so quiet and you were gone." Frank held up his hand, smiling. "I'm not mad. I'm impressed. You've been working here 6 years and I had no idea you could do this. Makes me wonder what other secrets my employees are hiding." The elderly woman with the walker spoke up again. "Young man, I don't know you, but I'm going to be honest. I live at Sunset Hills. It's a nice place, clean, safe, but it's boring. We sit in our rooms or in the common area and watch TV. Maybe play cards. We're just waiting, Waiting for visits from family that don't come often enough. Waiting for the days to pass, but this made me feel alive again." Others nodded in agreement. Someone said they'd come back tomorrow. Another person asked what time Maya would play. A man in a wheelchair said he was going to tell everyone at the home about this. Frank's eyes got wider with each comment. Maya could practically see the wheels turning in his head. "All right," he said. "How about this? Maya plays every day at 1 o'clock, after the lunch rush, before the dinner prep. 1 hour, does that work?" The room erupted in agreement. People were smiling, actually smiling in a way that transformed their faces. Made them look younger, more alive. Maya felt overwhelmed by it all. This morning she'd woken up dreading another ordinary day. Now she was being asked to do the thing she'd given up on, the thing she thought she'd lost forever. "I'll do it," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I'd love to." Over the next hour, the diner stayed busy in a way it never had during afternoon hours. People ordered coffee and pie. Some ordered full meals. They talked and laughed and wiped away tears. Mr. Peterson, who usually left right after breakfast, stayed until almost 3. Helen ordered a second cup of tea and sat with 3 other women, all of them sharing stories about their lives. Maya went back to work, refilling drinks and taking orders, but everything felt different now. The diner didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like something else, something she didn't have a name for yet. As the crowd finally started to thin out, a younger woman approached Maya. She had a camera around her neck and a phone in her hand. "Hi," she said. "I'm visiting my grandmother. She lives at Sunset Hills. I was picking her up for a doctor's appointment when I heard music coming from here. I came in and saw what was happening. I hope this is okay, but I took a short video. Is it all right if I share it? What you're doing here is really special. People should know about it." Maya hesitated. She wasn't doing this for attention. She was doing it because it felt right, because it healed something in her even as it touched something in others. But then she looked around the diner at all these faces. At Helen still smiling. At Mr. Peterson looking more peaceful than she'd ever seen him. At the man in the wheelchair who'd said he felt empty, now chatting with Frank about the weather. "Sure," Maya said finally. "If you think it might help someone else, then yes. Share it." She had no idea that by morning everything would change. Maya woke up to her phone buzzing like crazy. It was 6 in the morning, an hour before her alarm was supposed to go off. She grabbed it from her nightstand, squinting at the bright screen in her dark bedroom. 47 text messages, 63 missed calls. Her social media apps had so many notifications that the numbers just showed as plus signs. Her heart started racing. Had something terrible happened? She opened the first text. It was from her cousin Rachel, who lived 2 states away. "OMG, is this really you? You're everywhere." The next text was from a high school friend she hadn't talked to in years. "Girl, you're viral. I'm so proud of you." Viral? What were they talking about? Maya's hands shook as she opened the video app. There it was, right on her feed. The video that woman had taken yesterday at the diner. But it didn't have a few hundred views like Maya expected. It had millions. Actually, millions. The numbers kept climbing as she watched. 3.2 million views, 3.3 million, 3.4. She pressed play with trembling fingers. There she was, sitting at that old piano, completely lost in the music. The camera caught everything. Her face, peaceful and sad at the same time. Her fingers moving across the keys. And then it panned to show the elderly people crying. Helen clutching her photograph. Mr. Peterson with his face in his hands. The man in the wheelchair reaching for his friend. All of it raw and real and beautiful. The caption read, "This waitress brought an entire room to tears with her piano playing. Watch what happens when she shares her gift with forgotten souls at a local diner. This is what healing looks like." Maya scrolled through the comments. There were thousands of them. Tens of thousands. People from all over the world sharing their own stories, talking about grandparents they'd lost, music that made them cry, moments when they felt truly seen and heard. Some people were tagging news stations. Others were asking where the diner was located. Someone had even started calling her the piano angel. She felt sick and excited and terrified all at once. This wasn't supposed to happen. She'd just played some music. Just tried to feel something real for the first time in years. Now millions of strangers were watching the most vulnerable moment of her life. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Is this Maya? The pianist from Rosewood Diner? A professional voice, polished and quick. My name is Jennifer. I'm a producer for Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on the show. Are you available this week? Maya nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, what? Your video has touched millions of people. We want to share your story. Can we send a crew to film at the diner? We'd love to interview some of the residents too. 3 more news stations called before Maya could even process the first one. Local channels. National programs. A radio show. A podcast about human interest stories. Everyone wanted to talk to her. Everyone wanted to know her story. By the time she got to work at 7, there were already people waiting outside the diner with cameras. Frank stood at the door looking completely overwhelmed. When he saw Maya, relief flooded his face. Thank God you're here. I've had 17 phone calls already. Reporters, bloggers, even someone from the mayor's office. Maya, what did you do? I played piano, she said weakly. Just like we talked about. Well, apparently the whole world wants to hear you play now. The day was chaos. Pure chaos. Maya tried to work her regular shift, but people kept coming in. Not just elderly folks from Sunset Hills, though they came too. Younger people, families, groups of friends. All wanting to see the piano. Wanting to hear Maya play. Wanting to be part of something they'd seen online. Frank had to turn people away because the fire code only allowed so many in the building. A line formed outside. An actual line wrapped around the block, just to get into a small neighborhood diner that usually had maybe 20 customers at once. By noon, Frank pulled Maya aside. His face was stressed, but also kind of amazed. Listen, he said. I need to close early today. This is too much. We're not equipped for this. But Maya, this could be really good for us. Really good? I've done more business in 5 hours than I usually do in a week. I'm so sorry, Maya said. I never meant for this to get so big. Don't apologize. But we need a plan. We can't keep running like this. That's when a woman in an expensive suit walked through the door. She had perfectly styled gray hair and carried a leather briefcase. She looked completely out of place among the regular diner crowd. Frank Harrison? Maya Chen? She extended her hand to both of them. My name is Patricia Winters. I'm the director of Sunset Hills Retirement Community. I've been trying to call all morning, but your line has been busy. Could we talk? They sat in a booth while Frank flipped the sign to closed. Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out some papers. I'll get straight to the point, she said. What happened here yesterday was remarkable. I've been running Sunset Hills for 12 years, and I've never seen our residents so animated. So happy. They can't stop talking about Maya and her music. She slid a document across the table. We'd like to hire you. Not full-time necessarily, but regularly. We have a community room that's rarely used. We could put a proper piano in there. You could play twice a week. Maybe 3 times. We'd pay you, of course. More than you make here, I'd imagine. Maya stared at the paper. It was a job offer. An actual job offer to do what she loved. What she'd given up on. The salary made her eyes water. It was almost double what she made at the diner. But she looked at Frank. He'd given her a job when she desperately needed one. He'd been patient and fair. Just yesterday, he'd supported her piano playing without hesitation. She couldn't just leave him. Frank must have seen something in her face because he smiled. Take it, he said. Maya, take the job. But what about here? What about the diner? We'll figure it out. Maybe you could still work a couple shifts. Maybe you could play here on your days off. Or maybe this is just your chance to do what you were meant to do all along. Patricia leaned forward. There's more. The video has sparked interest from other facilities, nursing homes, community centers, adult day programs. They're all calling me asking how they can get something like this. Music therapy programs have existed for years, but what you did, that natural, authentic connection, that's different. That's special. She pulled out more papers. I've been talking with some colleagues. We want to start a program. Train other musicians to work with elderly populations, not just playing concerts but really connecting. Bringing music into places where people have forgotten what it feels like to be moved by something beautiful. We want you to be part of building this. Maya's head was spinning. Yesterday she was just a waitress. Today she was being offered a job, maybe a career, doing something she'd thought was lost forever. It felt too big, too fast, too impossible. I need time to think, she said. Of course, Patricia said. But I'll be honest, other people are already reaching out to some of the residents, offering them money to do interviews, trying to capitalize on this moment. I'd rather see something good and real come from it. Something that helps people. After Patricia left, Maya sat alone in the empty diner. The same diner where she'd folded napkins and poured coffee and tried not to think about the life she'd lost. She looked at the piano in the corner. That dusty, out-of-tune piano that had sat forgotten until yesterday. Just like her phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from Mr. Peterson. It was the first text message she'd ever gotten from him. She didn't even know he had a cell phone. Thank you for reminding me that beautiful things still exist in the world. Please keep playing. People like us need the reminder. Maya read it 3 times. Then she opened her email and started composing a response to Patricia. She didn't have all the answers yet. Didn't know exactly how this would work. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to let fear stop her from living anymore. Not when she'd seen what happened when she let herself be brave. Not when her music could reach into people's hearts and remind them they were still alive, still capable of feeling, still here. She was going to say yes to all of it. And she was going to figure out the rest as she went. 6 months later, Maya stood in the newly renovated community room at Sunset Hills, preparing for what had become the highlight of everyone's week. The room looked completely different now. The dingy beige walls had been repainted a warm cream color. Large windows let in natural light. Comfortable chairs were arranged in a semicircle facing a beautiful grand piano that still made Maya's heart skip a beat every time she saw it. The piano had been donated by the Crawford Foundation, a local charity run by a businessman who'd seen the viral video and wanted to help. He'd called it an investment in human dignity. Maya called it a miracle. The thing was worth more than she'd make in 3 years, and every time she touched its keys, she remembered that dusty old upright in the corner of the diner where all of this started. She still worked at Rosewood Diner 2 mornings a week. Frank had insisted she keep some connection to the place, and honestly, Maya didn't want to give it up completely. It kept her grounded, reminded her where she came from. Plus, the breakfast crowd still asked about her music, and she liked being able to tell them about what was happening at Sunset Hills. But this, what she did here 3 times a week, this was her real work now, her calling, as her mother would have said. She'd taken the job with Patricia and hadn't looked back. Well, that wasn't completely true. She'd looked back plenty, questioned herself, wondered if she deserved this second chance. But then she'd play, and she'd see the faces of the people listening, and all the doubts would quiet down. The room started filling up. Mr. Peterson came in first, like he always did. He'd moved into Sunset Hills 2 months ago, said he was tired of being alone in his big empty house. Now he sat in the front row every single time Maya played. He'd even started bringing sheet music, suggesting songs he wanted to hear, songs his wife had loved. Songs that brought her back to him for a little while. Helen arrived next, arm in arm with her new friend Dorothy. The 2 of them had become inseparable. They'd discovered they'd both taught at schools in the same district, just decades apart. They spent their afternoons swapping teaching stories and their evenings at Maya's concerts. Helen still brought that photograph of her husband, but she didn't clutch it as desperately anymore. She just kept it in her lap, like a gentle reminder rather than a lifeline. The room filled quickly, 50 chairs and every single one taken. Some people even stood along the walls because they didn't want to miss it. Maya recognized most of the faces now. Knew their names, knew their stories, knew which songs made them cry and which ones made them smile. There was George, who'd been a jazz musician in his youth and sometimes hummed along. There was Rita, who'd lost her hearing in one ear but came anyway because she said she could feel the music in her bones. There was Bill and Nancy, the couple who'd been married 67 years and still held hands during every performance. But there were new faces too. There were always new faces. Word had spread beyond Sunset Hills. People came from other retirement communities across the city. Some family members brought their elderly parents, saying they'd heard about the piano lady, who made people feel alive again. The waiting list to get into Maya's concerts was 3 weeks long now. Patricia walked to the front of the room and raised her hands for quiet. All right, everyone, I know you're excited. Before Maya plays, I have a quick announcement. As many of you know, we've been working on expanding this program. Well, I'm happy to say that as of next month, we'll be launching music sessions at 5 other facilities in the area, and we've trained 4 new musicians to lead them. The room erupted in applause. Maya felt pride swell in her chest. This was bigger than her now. The video that had gone viral hadn't just changed her life. It had sparked something real, something lasting. Patricia had written grants, talked to foundations, convinced city officials that music therapy for the elderly wasn't just nice, it was necessary. And, Patricia continued, we've been contacted by facilities in 12 other states who want to start similar programs. Maya has agreed to help develop training materials and mentor new musicians. We're calling it the Music and Memory Project. More applause. Maya ducked her head, still not quite comfortable with being the center of attention. She'd done dozens of interviews now, been on 3 national news programs, even got invited to speak at a conference about elderly care, but it still felt surreal. She was just someone who played piano, someone who'd stumbled into this by accident. Except it wasn't really an accident, was it? She'd made a choice that day in the diner. A choice to be brave, to stop hiding from the thing that made her feel whole, and that one choice had rippled outward in ways she never could have imagined. Patricia finished her announcements and took a seat. The room went quiet with anticipation. Maya sat at the piano, her hands resting on the keys. This moment, right before she started playing, this was her favorite part. The stillness, the expectation, the feeling that something important was about to happen. She began with Clair de Lune. She always started with Clair de Lune. It was tradition now. Helen's song, the song that had started everything. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence she'd rebuilt note by note, practice session by practice session. The music filled the room and she watched as people's faces transformed. The worried lines smoothed out. The sad eyes softened. The busy minds grew quiet. This was the magic she'd discovered. Music didn't erase pain or bring back the dead or fix what was broken, but it created a space where people could exist with their pain differently, could remember their loved ones without being crushed by the loss, could feel connected to something bigger than their loneliness. When the song ended, she moved into a livelier piece, something with energy and joy. People's feet started tapping. A few folks swayed in their seats. George hummed along, his eyes closed, probably remembering smoky jazz clubs and late nights with his band. Maya played for an hour, mixing sad songs with happy ones, classical pieces with old standards everyone knew. She played What a Wonderful World and watched people mouth the words. She played Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and saw tears slip down weathered cheeks. She played Somewhere Over the Rainbow and heard a few shaky voices singing along. Each song was a gift. Each note was a small act of love. When she played the final piece, a gentle Chopin nocturne, she let herself think about her mother. Let herself remember the green chair in the afternoon light and the feeling of being understood without words. The grief was still there. Would always be there. But it didn't hurt the same way anymore. Now it felt more like gratitude. Gratitude for having had someone who loved her enough to sit and listen, who believed in her enough to dream big dreams. The last note faded away. The room stayed quiet for a long moment, holding on to the feeling. Then the applause started. Not polite golf clap applause, but real, enthusiastic, from the heart clapping. People stood up. Some wiped tears. Others smiled so wide it looked like their faces might split. Mr. Peterson approached her first. He did this every time, had a little ritual of thanking her personally. But today he was holding something. An envelope. My son came to visit last weekend, he said. First time in 8 months. I told him about you and your music, about how it makes me feel close to his mother again. He wanted me to give you this. Maya opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter was from Mr. Peterson's son, explaining that he'd been avoiding his father because it hurt too much to see him alone. But hearing about the music program had given him courage to reconnect. The check was a donation to the Music and Memory Project, a substantial one. He's coming back next month, Mr. Peterson said, his voice thick with emotion. We're going to come to your concert together, both of us. He wants to hear what brought his mother back to me." Maya hugged him, this old man who'd been so silent and sad 6 months ago, who now smiled regularly and had started joining group activities and had reconnected with his son. Music hadn't fixed everything, but it had opened a door, given him a reason to keep showing up to life. As the room slowly emptied, Maya sat alone at the piano for a few extra minutes. She thought about that scared waitress who'd been too afraid to touch these keys, who thought her dreams had died with her mother, who couldn't see any future beyond just surviving. She wished she could go back and tell that version of herself what she knew now. That sometimes the things we lose lead us to what we're meant to find. That broken dreams can rebuild themselves into something different but equally beautiful. That it's never too late to become who you were supposed to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Frank. "Big crowd at the diner this morning. Everyone asking about you. Told them you're changing the world one song at a time. Proud of you, kid." Maya smiled and packed up her sheet music. Tomorrow she had training sessions with the new musicians. Next week she was flying to another state to help set up a program there. Next month she was recording an album with all proceeds going to fund more music therapy programs. But right now, in this moment, she just felt grateful. Grateful for dusty pianos and second chances. Grateful for elderly people who'd taught her that it's never too late to feel something real. Grateful for a mother who'd given her this gift and a life that had finally shown her how to use it. She stood up, turned off the lights, and walked out into the afternoon sun. Tomorrow she'd play again, and the day after that, and the day after that, because this was what love looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect performances, just showing up. Making music, reminding people that beauty still exists in the world, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.